In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating how you can use Inkscape to create complicated shapes such as these chess pieces here. So let's jump right in and get started. I'm going to be working in order here, starting with the king, then the queen, and then so on and so forth. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my rectangle tool, and I'll click and drag on the canvas to draw a rectangle with a greater height value than width. And I'm going to convert that to a path by going to Path, Object to Path. And I'm going to take my nodes tool and I will enable the scaling handles up here in the tool settings. And I'm going to hold Control and Shift and scale this out about that far. I'm going to move this down a little bit actually, just to get it at the right proportion. I might even take these two nodes right here and bring those in. And I'm holding Control while I do that. And that, I would say, looks pretty good. And now let me scale that down a little bit, holding Control and Shift while I do that so that it maintains the aspect ratio. Now I'm going to grab the Circles and Ellipses tool, and I will click and drag to draw an ellipse going over the object, somewhat like that. I'll make that a little smaller. I want to make sure I have it centered, so let me select both of those objects. I'll go to my Align and Distribute menu. If you don't see yours, just go to Object and select Align and Distribute. And I'm going to set the relative to last selected and center it on the vertical axis. And then I will unify those together by going to Path and selecting Union. So now I'll zoom in on this. I'm going to grab my Nodes tool. I'm going to click on this button up here to add the Add Corners Live Path effect. I'll click on that and I'll select those two nodes right there, and I'll take this little handle and bring that out just to make that from a corner to a smooth edge. And then I will click this button up here to convert that to a path, or in other words, finalize the change. And now I'm going to grab my Circle and Ellipse tool again, and I'm going to click and drag to draw an ellipse going down there like that. Let me make sure I have these two centered. And I'm going to duplicate the circle. You can right click it and go to duplicate, or what I like to do is just press Control D, or that would be Command D if you're on Mac. So I'm going to duplicate that and bring that down here. Hold Control when you're clicking and dragging it down to maintain its position on the vertical axis. And then I'm going to enable snapping, and I'll grab the rectangle tool, and let me zoom in on this. I'm going to snap to this left edge and click and drag and snap to that right edge like that. And now we have the base of the chess piece. So let me turn off snapping now. I'm going to select all three of these objects down here that we just created and unify them together by going to Path and selecting Union. And let me just move that up a little bit. I'm going to scale that down. We don't want it to be too much wider than the base of this shape right here. And now I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, and I'll click and drag to draw a rectangle going over this part right here. And I'll take this handle and round the edges of that rectangle so that they're completely rounded. And again, I want to center that relative to everything else. And now I'm going to duplicate this larger shape here. So again, Command D or Control D, hold Control, move this one up here, and then hold Control, take this top arrow and scale that down. And I'm just going to resize a few things in here according to how they look visually anyway. I'm not using any set measurement with this. I'm just eyeballing it. Okay, so now we have the base of the shape, and we can use this as a starting point for all of the other chess pieces we're going to create. So let me first take this right here, and I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to hold Control and move this up here. And I'll hold Control and Shift and scale that down. Or you know what? Let me Command Z to undo that. I'm going to grab the Nodes tool. Let's convert this to a path. We'll go to Path, Object to Path, and I'll take these nodes right here and move those in, holding Control while I do this so that I maintain its position on the vertical axis. Let me change that a little more. Okay, and I want to make sure that's centered as well. And now, let me move that up a little more. And now I'm going to grab the Stars and Polygons tool. The setting I'm going to use up here, I'm going to choose Polygon rather than Stars. I'm going to use 5 corners and Rounded and Randomize, both set to 0. And with those parameters set, I'm going to hold Control and click and drag up. I'm going to move my mouse in an upward direction and make sure that we have this flat edge down here and the point going vertically up top like that. And then we'll convert this to a path as well. I'm going to grab the nodes tool. Let me hold control and bring this node down. And we're going to add the corners live path effect to this one as well. And I'm going to start off with these two corners right here. And I'm going to give them a subtle roundness like that. And then I'll take this top one and I'll make this rounded just about as far as the handles of the other corners that we just rounded, but making sure not to touch them too closely or go past them. And once that's set, we can convert that to a path by clicking this button up here. And that's good to go. Let's place this right about here. I'm going to hold control and scale this down. And I will hold shift and click on that shape. We want to make sure we have everything centered here. In fact, just to make sure everything's good, I'm going to select all of this and just make sure it's centered. It probably is, but just to be safe. And let me scale that down a little more. And now we're going to put a little cross on top of it because that's what it looks like is on top of the king piece. So let me go back over there. I'm going to make a duplicate of this shape, Control D, and I'm going to flip this vertically. You can use this icon up here in the toolbar. What I like to do is just press the letter V on the keyboard and that flips it vertically. And then hold Control and Shift and scale this down, move this down to about here. And now I'm going to create a rectangle going across here like this. And let me change the handle of that so it's the corners are a little rounded, but not entirely. And then I'm going to grab the ellipse tool and click and drag to create an ellipse going on top of it like this. And I want to make sure I have everything centered here. Whoops. Okay, everything's centered. And now I'm going to resize some of this. Make sure everything looks right proportionally. So we're going to make this a little smaller. And again, I'm not using any measurement. I'm kind of just eyeballing this as I go along. That looks about right. Okay, good. So there is the king piece. Now let's move on to the queen. So to create the queen, I'm just going to select all of this and duplicate it with Control D and move it over here. And I'm going to get rid of this top piece over here. And I'm going to get rid of this top piece. I'm just clicking on it and pressing the letter or pressing the delete key on the keyboard. And then I'll take this up here and I'm going to move this down because the king piece is slightly taller than the queen. So I'm going to move that down just a tiny bit. Not too much though. We're going to have to move down the other pieces as well. So we want to leave some room in there. Let me grab my circle tool, hold Control and click and drag, create a perfectly round circle and place it in there like that. Make it a little bigger. Move that down. And then I'll duplicate that, Control D, make a bigger one, or not a bigger one, make a smaller one, like that. And let me make sure I have everything here centered as well. Okay, looking good. This one has to be slightly smaller, so I'll move that down a little bit. And that's looking about right. So let me move this over and make room for the next chess piece, which would be the bishop. So to do that, I'm going to make a duplicate of this piece here. Control D to duplicate it. Hold Control, move it over. Let's get rid of this shape in here. And let's move this out of the way for now. We're going to come back to that in just a second. And I'm going to take this one and move this down about that far. And let's go to the nodes tool. We're going to have to convert this to a path. So I'm going to go to Path, Object to Path. And then I'm going to select this node up here and click the corner button up here. I'm going to click that twice. You click it once, it's going to make it into a corner node. And if you click it a second time, it's going to flatten the edges. So that's what we want. And then I'm going to hold Control and move this up about that far. And then I'll take this circle and place it back on top like that. And let me just make sure I have that centered. And this piece is shorter than the queen. So let me move this down a little bit. Okay, looking good. And now I got to put a little notch in that piece. If you see here, we have a notch going in the side of that. So to do that, pretty simple. We're just going to grab the rectangle tool, click and drag to create a rectangle. Let me make those corners sharp again. I'm just going to click this button up here in the tool settings menu that says make corners sharp. And I will resize this accordingly. Let me place this over here and make this white. and then click on it to get the rotation handles, and then hold Control and rotate this clockwise 2 steps like that. Place it right about there, and then hold Shift and click on the shape beneath it and go to Path, Difference. And now it is subtracted. Now, if you notice any of this bottom piece is showing through here, because if you made your piece large enough, you'll notice it shows through here like that. If that happens for you, I'll just do this anyway just to demonstrate it. Let me grab the pen tool. I'm going to choose the straight line setting, and I'm just going to trim off the top of this piece right here. So let me undo that. Let me start right here, hold Control, bring the line straight through this rounded rectangle, and all the way around back to the starting point. Grab the Select tool, hold Shift, click on this shape, and go to Path, Difference. You only have to do that if your shape is showing through in this negative space area. If not, then you could just skip that step. I just did it anyway just to show you. And there we go. So the next piece would be the night. So for this one, let me make a duplicate of this shape here. Move this over. And let me get rid of this object, get rid of that one, get rid of that one, get rid of that one. And we want to subtract everything above this rounded rectangle right here. So I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool and click and drag to draw a shape going over, or going where the edge of the shape, or the edge of the rectangle goes halfway through that rectangle like that. And then hold Shift and click on this larger shape and go to Path, Difference. And now to create the horse for the knight, I'm going to grab the rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag to draw a rectangle. And I want to make this entirely rounded like that. And let's convert that to a path. Go to the nodes tool. I'm going to select all of these nodes, and I'm going to click on the corner setting once. This one right here that says make selected nodes a corner. Click that once. And now what we can do is we can take just that node and press delete, and then hold Control and click on each of these handles to flatten that bottom edge. And now we can take this node right here and press delete. And again, hold Control, click on that handle and that handle to create that flattened edge. And what we're looking to do here is, first of all, we want to center this relative to the other object. So let me center that. Let me move this down. We want this shape to be slightly shorter than this object here, or this chess piece. So let me grab the nodes tool. I'm going to take these 2 nodes right here and hold Control and move them up or down depending on how large your shape is. So I'm going to move mine right about there. And as far as the width goes, you want the object to be slightly about the same width as this object, give or take, maybe slightly larger. Let me do something like that. Before I go any further, let me grab the nodes tool and apply the corners live path effect. And I'm going to select these 2 corners right here, and I'm going to round those edges. Okay, and I'll take this top one. I'm going to round this one very slightly, just to make it consistent with the design of everything else, because I'm working with rounded corners here. And there we go. So I may have to make this larger or smaller depending on its size relative to the rest of this. And there is the start. So now we're going to create the face of the horse. So let me grab the rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag to draw a rectangle going in here like that. Let me make the corners sharp. And let me adjust the size of this. And let me convert this to a path. Go to the nodes tool. And now we're going to open up the path effects menu. To open up your path effects menu, just go to Path and select Path Effects. I have mine opened already. And with the object selected, I'm looking for the corners path effect. It should be the first one. And the option I'm going to choose, I believe, is inverse fillet. So let me select that one. And let me select just this corner right here and bring that in. And that's what we're looking for. Now let me grab the select tool. Let me bring this in a little bit, bring it up. And you're going to have to use the nodes tool to kind of play around with the size of this. Right now, this top right corner is sticking out, so I want to bring that in. I'm going to hold Control while I do all of this to make sure the aspect or its position on the axis is maintained. And I'm going to double click the path right there to add a new node. And I'm going to double click right here to add another new node. And I'm going to select these two nodes and hold Control and bring them up. And I'll maybe even bring this one out a little bit. And I'll bring these two out. And maybe I'll take these three and bring them down. And actually, no, let me undo that. I'll take just these two and bring them down. And if you see what I'm doing here, I'm kind of making the shape of everything using these nodes. And I'm going to keep zooming out to compare it with the rest of the shape to make sure the proportions are right. I may have to make this a little larger. Okay, so this is the trickiest one of all of them. So I think right about there, I'm happy with how that looks. I'm going to select the object now and convert it to a path. And then I'll grab my nodes tool and I'm going to apply the corners live path effect. And I'm going to start rounding some of these corners. So I'm going to make this one slightly rounded. I'll make these two slightly rounded. And I'll round these edges as well, slightly. And I'm going to have to bring these two nodes in a little bit. And I'm going to take just this node and I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. And I'll take this node and bring this down a little bit. And that's pretty close to what we're going for. May even have to bring that in some more. Okay, that right about there looks good. So I'm going to leave that as it is. And the next would be the Rook. So let me make a duplicate of these objects over here. Control D, move this over. And let's get rid of this, get rid of that. We're going to keep this here, but we're going to move it down a little bit. And I'm going to take this shape down here, and I'm going to duplicate that, Control D, and move this up. And we're going to use this as the top of the castle. And I'll scale that down. And let me grab my nodes tool and select these nodes and hold Control and bring them up. Make sure everything looks good proportionally. Back to the select tool. Maybe I'll scale it down a little more. And I'm going to put the notches in the top here. To do that, pretty simple. We're just going to use rectangles. Let me make them white so I can see how they look. And I'll press Control D and then hold Control and move it over here to make another copy. And I'm just going to space them apart roughly, evenly like that. And then I'll select both of those, unify them together, path union, hold Shift, center it on this object using your alignment menu, center it vertically, and then go to, actually no, before that, let's take this object and duplicate that, and then bring this down about this far. And then select those white objects and go to Path, Difference, so that those notches now follow the contour of the top of the shape. And now we can hold Shift and click on the Path menu and go to Difference. And there we go. So I'm just going to adjust that a little bit and bring that down some more. And I forgot to round these corners. So let me go back to my nodes tool, the corners live path effect, and I'm going to select these corners right here and then take this handle and round them. Okay, looking good. Convert that to a path using that button. And the final piece would be the pawn. So to make this shape, let me just make a duplicate of these right here. Move them over. And I'm going to get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that. And we should be left with this right here. And I'm going to make a circle. Hold Control and Shift. I'm going to have to make that black. Place this right over the center like that. Maybe even move this up a bit. And I'm going to grab my nodes tool and bring this in. Let me convert that to a path. And then I'll bring these nodes in. and make sure I have everything centered. And let me zoom out and see how it looks proportionately compared to everything else. And I'd say that looks pretty good. Maybe this could be a little smaller. Okay, that's good enough. So now we've finished creating our chess pieces. They're all just individual shapes though. So if you want to make them into one object, just select all of them and go to Path Union and then repeat that process for each of these. I'm just going to select them and go to Path Union. And you get the idea. And then you will have these vector chess pieces that you created yourself using nothing but basic shapes in Inkscape. If you found this lesson useful, then consider checking out my Inkscape Masterclass. It's a collection of over 60 videos where I go over all of the tools and features in Inkscape, and I explain what they are and demonstrate how they work. Kind of like how I did in this video. We even have a private community where you can ask questions and get help from me anytime you want. And best of all, there's no monthly membership fees. You just pay $17 one time and you're in for life. I'll have some information about that down below if you want to check that out. As always, thanks for watching.